24 hours to change the world. Here's your chance to shape the future.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sadia. I'm a Year 3 student at NUS and also a summer intern at GGEF. Welcome to our SDG Open Hack Singapore Bootcamp. Whether you're a mentor, a participant, or an observer for SDG Open Hack Singapore, we're excited to have you here with us and hope that this is an enriching experience for you. To get the ball rolling, I would first like to provide a brief introduction of the event. SDG Open Hack Singapore is an atypical hackathon organized by GGEF, a social enterprise that aims to promote innovation, sustainability, and leadership. This hackathon encourages university students across various disciplines to come up with innovative solutions for societal and environmental issues linked to the UN SDGs. We thank our program partners, university partners, corporate partners, supporting organizations, and network partners for allowing us to bring such a meaningful event that will contribute to global sustainability discourse. Without further ado, I would like to introduce the first segment of the bootcamp. When it comes to marketing your innovative solutions, branding and designing your product will form a crucial aspect of the effectiveness of your solution. To impart his valuable knowledge on how to brand and design your product effectively, I'm pleased to introduce the managing partner of Stepworks, a creative branding agency based in Hong Kong, Stephen Barry.
Thank you so much, Sadia, and hello to everyone who is joining the SDG Open Hack SG event. So thank you so much. I'm going to jump straight into this. Let me just quickly share my screen. So this session, I'm hoping is going to be really useful for you guys that are going to be joining the event to participate in the competition. And my goal for you is that hopefully it's going to feel somewhat like drinking from a fire hose. There's going to be a lot of really useful information on there in this presentation for you. So let me just give you a quick intro about my company and myself. So as you can see here behind me, we're all about creating positive change. That's what drives our purpose as an organization. And we do that through wholehearted brand building. Wholehearted is actually our DNA. It's the relationships we build, the approach that we bring to the table. And I'm sure for all you participants, if you are also wholehearted in this endeavor, it will serve you well. So just 3 snapshots of our work. In Hong Kong, we've put a smile on the trams over here. So probably Hong Kong's least polluting or zero polluting roadside transportation vehicle for over 100 years. We've branded the judiciary in Hong Kong and also work with the likes of Swire Pacific on their sustainability reports. And my mission for you today, or my mission for myself, I should say, is to share with you ideas, frameworks, and tips to enable you and your team to influence perceptions, to convey what makes your idea distinct, and to be able to promote your idea with greater confidence. Because my understanding of what you guys are aiming to do is to submit a 2-minute video of your idea. So it's not a lot of time to get your idea across. I've been given half an hour, unlike you guys, which are going to be submitting a 2-minute video that's got to really make a big impact. What I'll be talking about will be the concept of a brand, understanding actually what is a brand, providing you with a blueprint for your brand, a framework for you to articulate what it is that makes your offering special. And then finally, some design and some presentation tips for you. So let's start off with what is a brand. So there's a lot of smart people who have got a lot of different things to say about a brand. So for example, you've got Jeff Bezos, who says that your brand is what people say about you when you are not in the room. You've got Steve Forbes, who says your brand is the single most important investment you can make in your business. And you've got someone like Elon Musk, who says brand is just a perception, and perception will match reality over time. So this is about presenting the brand as an idea that people can buy into, and that what people can see in that idea will then become reality in time. And one helpful way to think of brand is that brand is roughly like your reputation. So when people, you're talking to your friends, you might say, oh, I like that brand. What you probably mean is that, that brand has a good reputation. And any brand, and in your case, your idea exists as a set of perceptions in people's minds. And the art of branding, or the discipline of branding, is about influencing those perceptions, influencing what people, how people see your idea. And we do that through words, images, design, and other experiences. So you can think of the brand in your case as a North Star to attract and guide and develop a shared vision for development. And when you do your brand clearly aligned and expressed, it helps inspire trust sooner. You help motivate positive change, which is what the end goal of what you're trying to do here. It helps you stand out from the crowd. You're distinct, and people desire what you have to offer more. And you help, in a commercial sense, it would be to attract customers and talent. In your case, it would be to attract like-minded individuals and attract the judges and other people who are part of this program want to be part of your idea, to establish your position and contribute to growth, to the adoption of your idea. So a typical brand development journey would range from a discovery process to clearly defining and articulating the brand and the overall identity, which might include the logo and the overall design language, the look and feel of the brand, and then the website, ad campaigns, different brand management tools, and then launching the brand into the world and then continually improving it. But you've only got 2 minutes and you've only got a few days to do this. So you won't be doing all of that. Let's just jump straight in to step 2, which is the brand definition, right? So we call it a brand model. So here's the framework and here's how it works. So what is a brand model? So a brand model is a concise document that acts as a blueprint for your brand. It articulates your brand purpose. What do you promise? Why that promise can be believed, and distilling all that into something called a brand DNA that encapsulates the guiding idea behind your venture. And why is a brand model important? It's important because it aligns what your team and your stakeholders think, your team's thinking, your intentions, what your audience needs, reality, and what makes your brand distinct. So hopefully that makes sense. Always looking at what is the core idea of what you're offering. Is this what the other stakeholders want? And I guess the stakeholders in this case are the positive change that you're trying to bring about that aligns with the SDG goals, and what makes you distinct. So here's the framework. And I'm sure if you reach out to the friendly people over at GGEF, they'll be more than happy to share a PDF of this with you. So the brand model encompasses the function. What are you actually going to accomplish as a team? The purpose, the societal purpose that drives your passion. The positioning. So looking at what else is out there. So for example, Is it about reducing poverty? Is it about reducing or providing clean water? What are the other points of reference out there? Your point of parity, what other technologies or ideas that are also able to do what you do, but then finally the point of distinction, which is what can get you noticed and remembered. Okay, so what makes you unique? And then looking at the promise, which is really important, you're offering as a key value proposition to your stakeholders. So thinking about any organization goes out there and makes a promise, and the people that you are pitching the idea to, they will think, that's a good promise for my goal. I see value in that promise, and therefore, I'll want to work with you. Or in a commercial sense, that people might want to part with their money. So the promises of your brand, of your offering, is really important. And then look at your overall brand narrative. Look at evidence that can back up your promise. So it's easy to make promises. Sometimes it's not so easy to deliver on those promises. And when you're able to deliver on your promise, you build a strong reputation. If one doesn't deliver on the promise, then that damages your reputation. So you need to be sure that whatever you promise, not only is it attractive, you also need to be able to deliver on that. And then within this brand model framework, you've got personality and attributes, which are the tone and manner of your brand. So for example, is it exciting? Is it optimistic? Is it friendly? Think of your brand as a person, and that will guide your design style, the type of words that you use, and how you guys present yourselves. And then finally, the brand, the essential ideas that you want to communicate at every touch point. That could also become your positioning phrase. Many people call the positioning phrase a tagline, but for you guys, it'll be more helpful if you think of it as a positioning phrase, because it's how you want to be positioned in the minds of your audience. So here's an example of a brand model. So here's our own company's brand model. Our function as a team is that we provide branding and marketing communication services. Our purpose is to create positive change. We do that through our wholehearted brand building approach. But at the end of the day, we want to create positive change for our customers, for ourselves, and beyond. Positioning. So the point of reference is that we're a branding firm. So there's lots of branding firms out there. If you say, oh, what type of company are you? We're a branding firm. Most people will get that. The point of parity, there's a lot of good branding firms out there, and most of them will be strategic, they're creative, they're helpful, they have a wide service range and a good track record. But what makes us distinct, what makes us unique, is our wholehearted approach and lasting positive change guarantee. So when people work with us, we guarantee that we will contribute to them lasting positive change. And the promise that we make to our customers is together we create valuable competitive advantages. So as you saw a few slides further up, when your brand is clearly aligned, then you enjoy a whole host of advantages, including inspiring trust sooner and being distinct, which is hopefully what your ideas will be as well. Then we follow that up with core brand messages to back up how we can deliver on our promise, that we're holistic, we have an international team, we have a proven step-by-step approach to our work that gets results. And I won't read all these to you because of being short on time. And the personality is true, kind, and open. And our attributes are holistic, international, and journey. So these are kind of the tone and manner that guides our communications, guides how we present ourselves. And if you visit our website, you hopefully will be able to see that. Our website is stepworks.co. But these kind of guide us to come back to present ourselves in this way and to use to use these keywords. And our brand DNA is one word: wholehearted. our positioning phrase is wholehearted brand building. So the idea of wholehearted is what we want to get across at every single touch point. It's the lens that we see the world through. So really simple. In most cases, it could go up to, say, 7 words. Sometimes it can be as short as 1 word. In our case, we've just got the 1 word, which we use to keep us on track at the core of everything that we do. So the most, looking at the framework again, the most important component for you, because you guys really don't have much time, you've got so much to get through, is to really look at the promise. What is it that you are promising in your idea? What's the positive change that's going to bring to the world? And, consider using that as your positioning phrase. So get people to buy into your promise, but as I mentioned, make sure that you can actually deliver on that promise. So here's the framework, and as I mentioned, do reach out to GGEF if you would like to get a copy of this, and you can just do your best to fill in the blanks with your teammates, and hopefully this will act as a good blueprint for you as you build out your idea for submission. Here are some examples of positioning phrases that we've done over the years. So in Hong Kong, we've got Hong Kong Tramways, Catch a Ride, Catch a Smile. We have a Silicon Valley material science company, Matrix, pioneering material science technology. So this is the positioning phrase, how they want to be seen in the minds of the audience. We have DCH Auriga, which supplies, distributes medicines across Asia, and their positioning phrase is challenge accepted, because customers work with them on very challenging projects, including at the moment delivering the COVID vaccines. And a little checklist for you as you deliver your create your brand model is that you need to make sure that it's sustainable. Meaning that the idea itself is sustainable, that it's not just a slogan that can be thrown away. It should be an idea that can last you for in the years to come. It needs to be true, means that it's grounded in reality. It's something that's actually extraordinary, meaning that it's unique and distinct and powerful. So you want to be able to use it as a rallying cry. So let's move on to design, because the clock is ticking. So here's an example of a project we did for a Silicon Valley venture capital firm, Alabaster. This is their brand model highlights. So their purpose was to create, their mission is to catalyze radical solutions to make a positive planet level impact. And their function is that they are startup advisors and investors. And what they promise is to help founders with far-reaching scientific breakthroughs build exciting companies and activate growth. Okay, so you see the personality and the attributes on the screen. I don't need to read those out. And the DNA, which was also the positioning phrase, is startup growth factor. Okay, so the types of companies that the Alabaster team invests in are like Perfect Day. So it's dairy milk without the cow, as an example. So lots of amazing technologies that they're invested in. And you'll see how, guided by the brand DNA startup growth factor, when the logo was designed, we've actually got a little droplet of the startup growth factor within the letters within Alabaster, within the letter A's of the Alabaster. So here we see the logo and how the brand actually rolls out, the look and feel rolls out across the website. On the left side of the screen, what you see are some snapshots of brand guidelines of how the brand is expressed. And you'll see that also linked back to the brand model. So when you do draft out your brand model, go back and, if you're doing the design to go along with your idea, refer back to this blueprint. So I'm just going to show you like 3 slides of typical brand guidelines that we do for our clients. Really, really in-depth typography, photography style, complementary colors, supporting graphics. And work like this takes months to do. So obviously you're not going to do anything along the lines of this as in as much detail. But do take this basic checklist, use the brand model as a guide, choose one color, so if you've got a color going on for your video, do pick one main color, choose one font, one typeface that has different weights so that you can give the content a bit more information hierarchy. Consistency communicates quality. So make sure that you keep the style consistent from beginning to end of your video, and just make people happy, because that's what draws people in. And always seek to simplify without being simplistic. Complexity creeps in easily, but simple is always smart. And some thoughts on telling your story. So here I'm veering off a little bit from the branding side of things, but thought that it would be helpful is, in your 2-minute video, you could use this as a guide for how you tell your story, how it unfolds. So you can start with a reflection on where we are today, the current situation that you're noticing, that's triggering you, the idea that you're presenting, a reflection of where you are at the moment, and then the ambition of the tomorrow that could be. And then those challenges aren't overcome. How terrible it would be if we, if the perils, if we don't get there together, and what are the things that you have to overcome together. So you're taking people on an emotional journey throughout your presentation, and then provide hope. Saying, however, with your idea, this is the insight that's going to help us achieve our ambition, that enables us to move forward. And then finally, the actual idea that turns your ambition into a reality. So this kind of storytelling framework, this narrative framework, I find quite helpful, and hopefully it will be helpful to you too. And as you, as you're working on your presentation and your idea, do keep in mind, what is the one thing you want your audience to remember? So as I understand, there's quite a few participants joining this open event. And so, the judges won't be able to keep everything in mind. So if they can see your video and be left with just one idea that they don't forget and they remember, you'll be doing really, really well. And that idea, that one thing, could potentially be what it is you're promising. So make sure that to give that as the thought and attention that it requires. But if you can leave your audience with just one thing that they remember, you're doing really well. And the thought that I would like to leave you with is that it's all about alignment, aligning what you can genuinely offer, what your stakeholders want, and what makes your idea distinct. Yep, and enjoy yourself. If you like, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, and wishing you all the very best with your submission. So
thank you, Stephen, for that brilliant insight into the creative.
Useful.
Sorry. Yes, it was really useful to all of us. So we had a really brilliant insight into the creative processes that go into branding and designing. And I'm sure the participants learned a lot about how we can actually leverage on these processes, such as creating a deliverable promise or making your design consistent to make your brand more receptive to your audience. For our next segment, we will gain an insight into the immense power of technology and how it can be harnessed to solve issues. So to speak on this issue, I'll be inviting Ahmedriya, the Senior Director of Strategy and Industry Development of Huawei.
Hello, Sadia. Thank you very much for the introduction. I hope you can see me well and everything is going well. Can you hear me well as well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect. Let me share my screen. I hope you can see this one as well. And now it's on the slideshow. I'm aware of the time, so again, good morning, good afternoon, good evening for everyone who's connected today. And I'll be speaking on tech innovation for good. So basically, I'll be speaking on two, or actually three, clear topics. One is technology. The other is sustainable development and sustainable development goals. And the third one is innovation. And then we'll see how they can interplay together for a proper use of technology, innovation for good. So basically, let's start with the tech part, and it might seem a little bit complicated, but I'm sure everyone here would be interested to see these kind of ICT trends I'm showing right now. So basically, if you see at the world right now, we have more than 170 digital strategy across the world. So we have almost every country has a digital strategy. This was not the case 5 or 6 or even 10 years ago, by the way. And why is that? It's basically because there's a very much of a movement of importance on how digital economy or technology as a whole should be thought of as a holistic approach, right? So it's not anymore about connectivity and some software applications or these kind of things. It has to be a holistic, converged, I would say, strategy between different technologies and how they can interplay together. What's interesting here is that you can see from our Huawei research that you can actually increase a country GDP or like a GDP on a national level by at least 1% when you increase the ICT investment with around like 15 to 20%. And also you can see that the global digital economy is actually growing 2.5 times faster than the global GDP, which is a very interesting thing if you think about it, because this tells you the direction we're going towards to, right? And if you look a little bit closer in any digital strategy for any country, for any market, you would find that they always has two very clear components: connectivity and computing, or what we say, like what we call sometimes intelligence or data analytics. So there's always these two components in any digital strategy. And that's why you have a lot of these digital strategies, they discuss like 5G, because this is the connectivity part, like the most, I would say, state of art connectivity part. And then you have the AI or the ML for the computing part. So you usually have those two very important cornerstone components for a proper digital economy, a proper digital strategy. The thing is, and please don't get scared with this architecture, but it's a very interesting way we're moving towards to. And actually, we are in the heart of this kind of digital revolution right now. And it simply says you've been hearing a lot of, I would say, key words like AI or blockchain or 5G, or even what we call sometimes B5G or beyond 5G, sensors, IoT, machine to machine. But how these all keywords or buzzwords interplay or work together within a digital strategy or digital framework. And this is particularly how it all works together. And this shows where you can put these kind of components, which can help you innovating with different, I would say, applications or different products or services that hopefully we're going to achieve the sustainable development goals using technology, and where you can put your innovations here to actually partner with different partners, like is it governments or UN organizations or corporates or mobile operators. So basically what we see right now in the world is that there's a huge revolution in connectivity, which means that anything is getting to be connected now. When we talk about sensors like thermal sensors or drones or things that you can sense specific attributes or components in a farm, if we're talking about specific industries or healthcare, all these kind of things is an actual components that has the main purpose of connectivity, of sending data, of making sure that these components can talk to each other. And this where the lowest layer that you can see here, which is what we call intelligent interaction, which is basically creating this digital footprint for the physical world. So the more you can connect different industries, the more you can have a better understanding in the digital world about what's happening in the physical world. And this with all what we call the interaction or the intelligent interaction layer. But all these kind of devices, or IoT, I would say, talking to each other, they transfer these data over an intelligent connectivity. And this is mostly the responsibility of mobile operators or broadband fixed providers. And they can be like seamlessly connected over Wi-Fi, over mobile broadband or fixed broadband or fiber optics, whatever the connectivity is. The more it's getting seamless, the more we are moving towards the future, which is connecting everything through everything. That's what we would like to say. And all this data comes to what we call an intelligent hub, or this where all the keywords related to data analytics, big data, or even the use of blockchain for storage or even for cybersecurity, all these kind of hubs that are mainly doing two things: storing data and computing data, or putting some sort of a layer where you can kind of process this data or divide it or structure it for an industry-specific data or application-specific data or service-specific data. And then you have on top of that the intelligent layer or the applications layer, and there where all the AI applications that you heard of would be placed, like which can provide a lot of applications, services, artificial intelligence kind of innovative services, and these are a kind of also moving towards an industry-specific application service. So practically, as an example, if you are thinking about a very interesting application that can be used in the healthcare sector, that, for example, checks patterns or anomalies for tuberculosis or for a specific disease or for COVID-19, whatever it is, where would you place that? You place this at this layer of intelligent or application services layer. And this means that you do not need to have any sort of connectivity to specific hospitals or patients or whatever. Sometimes you can have a specific industry or a specific field like farming or agriculture, and you would need both. You would need the devices where it can connect as sensors in specific areas, and these can actually send the data somehow through mobile operators through your hub or whatever back end you have, where you can have a lot of services or computing or artificial intelligence kind of processing that plays on it to create specific insights. So this is where you can place your innovation and which kind of partners you would like to partner with. So basically all this connectivity, all this interesting stuff that we're talking about is producing enormous amount of data. And this enormous amount of data has two problems and also two opportunities. And they are the same, two problems and opportunities. Depends how you look at it. One is the storage. How can you store it? And where can you store it? Because it's exponentially increasing. And by the way, less than 2% of the data in the world right now are just being stored. So we lose the rest because it's kind of very much of a unstructured, not very much focused on data. And the other one is about the computing. How can you compute this amount of data when you know that actually 80% of it is unstructured, like it's not kind of properly labeled, you don't know what kind of data this is and for what reason or for what purpose. So it's an interesting challenge, yet a very good opportunity that opened the door for all the innovations that's come into place to think or rethink about how can we use and get a very useful insights about this data to maybe offset, carbon footprint, or maybe to think about how we can optimize it in a way that uses less energy. And it's a very interesting problem and thing to think of, and it won't be stopping. Like it's going even more and more and exponentially growing for the coming, I would say, 10 years. This slide is basically showing the 7 patterns that we saw at different organizations we worked with that uses AI applications. So basically, there is a commonality between any AI applications that has been used, and all, I would say, I don't want to say all, but almost every AI application that we saw are doing at least one of these 7, if not more. And this is the purpose where you can actually use AI or think about it, that they can help you in these kind of things. So the first one is what we call hyper-personalization. And hyper-personalization, from the name, it's kind of personalizes the application or service for the specific individual. And it can be used so much in healthcare sector, it can be used so much in financial sector as well, but it's also interesting to see the ability of a machine learning algorithm that can really hyper-personalize specific things for specific user for checking its kind of his healthcare health records or data records or things like that. The other one is definitely, as you would expect, is patterns and anomalies. So of course you can use a lot of AI and machine learning just to check specific anomalies or outliers in terms of data or specific patterns that we weren't aware of it before. Another one is what we call the autonomous systems. And this is basically systems where you don't want humans to be involved for maybe high risk, maybe for other reasons. And you would like to have the system that's completely autonomous, used by the machine. Yes?
Hi, Ahmed. I'm so sorry for interrupting, but I believe we're actually still stuck on the first slide. So maybe you want to put your presentation in presentation mode so that we can see the correct slide. Yeah.
Thank you very much for telling me. That's a very good comment. But I think I actually have to say that I'm actually putting in presentation mode, which is a bit weird.
It's okay. I think as long as you just scroll down the slides as it is, it should be fine. We can still see the font. It was just that it was stuck at the first slide just now. Yeah.
So now we can see it?
Yes, just now when you were just scrolling down, it was fine.
Okay, let me see if you can see that. Wait. I think this should work.
It's not on the screen anymore. Oh, okay. Yes, right? That's perfect. Yes, thank you so much.
No, thank you for telling me. So now I think it's important to, so basically this was the one when I talked about digital strategies and how all these countries are actually using AI and 5G as one of their components for digital strategies and the relation between the investment and GDP. This is actually where I was trying to explain the whole idea of the two main components of digital economy, the connectivity part and computing part, and how they all interplay with different applications and technologies. So just to recap in less than 30 seconds so that I don't lose you and at the same time I don't lose the time. As you can see, the lower part, which is the intelligent interaction, this is where all the sensors, the IoT kind of come into place to make sure that everything is connected in a proper way and sends this data through the intelligent connectivity, which is seamless connectivity through different technologies, to what we call an intelligent hub that can be used to, this where the cloud is, this where you put the blockchain kind of layer to make sure that you're securing the data in a different ways and actually also having the data records in different kind of secure chains. Also this where a lot of the, what we call the storage technologies take place here. And on top of that, we have the last layer, which is the intelligent applications. And this is where you put the services, the applications that you might be thinking of and innovating around. And usually these kind of things were industry specific. So the intelligent application is being designed for a specific industry or for a specific vertical. But now actually the whole pipe is being designed for a specific industry or vertical. So you can have specific sensors for education or agriculture or a specific industry, and then all this data of this specific industry goes to the intelligent hub where it's actually being stored and structured, and then you can have a layer of application services on top of that to make sure that you are feeding into this. And this is where I was talking about data, and I would say the most two important points to take out of this slide is that 80% of our data is unstructured, which is huge, and I would say even less than 2% of the data are actually not stored because of poor data flows or optimization in terms of things, or also the insufficient storage capacity. So it's a very much of a challenge, especially that data is growing more and more, but also it is an opportunity for innovators to think about how can we use all this data being produced from different verticals like manufacturing, like airline industries, and how can we make sure that we use this data in an interesting way to make sure that we are moving toward the sustainable development goals or having it in a more optimized, sustainable way to help us achieve the goals. I here was talking about the main commonality of the artificial intelligence applications, and I'm not going to spend too much time in this one, but it's basically about, I would even summarize it in 3 basic categories. So most of the AI applications that we saw, it's either analytical AI or operational AI or predictive AI. So analytical is where you use AI to check patterns and anomalies, and this is one of the points here, is where you use AI to recognize things like images or sounds or things like that, and it can be used in different applications. So for example, I know that there's an AI application that was used to, on your smartphone, you can like cough on the phone, and then from the audio file, from the sound of the coughing, it can tell you with a good accuracy if you might have a TB or not, tuberculosis disease or not, which was a very interesting thing, because this specific disease has an issue with the early diagnosis. So by this kind of thing, you actually reach much more people. So, and this all about the analytical part. The operational AI is where you use like robots for specific missions, like, going into sewer pipes, places where it's even very high risk, like mining and things like that. And this is where you actually have used the AI or machine learning to operate specific things, like autonomous cars, for example, right? And then you have the predictive AI or predictive ability of AI, where you can use it to actually predict something in the future or might happen in the future based on historical data. And this is also very interesting in things related to specific crisis or natural disasters or things like that. So this is basically the commonality of artificial intelligence applications. And we're talking about all of this and technology and how interesting and how useful it can be, but we still have 3.7 billion people who are still unconnected, which is a very high number, I would say. I mean, it's like more than 45% of the population, right? So how can you use technology for good? But then how you define good, right? And this is a very important question. How do you define what's good and what's bad? And I think we have a clear map now for good, which is the 17 goals, the Sustainable Development Goals. I'm not sure how aware of you of the SDGs in terms of its details and everything, but I'm sure you already had some discussions and some research about them. So I don't want to go into details about, for example, how they were created in 2015, the UN General Assembly, and what's the purpose and everything like this, because I'm sure you know it. But I'll do a very quick SDG quiz. But I mean, I'm aware of the time, especially now, so I'm not gonna ask you to chat or comment about this kind of quiz, but just to think about it while I'm talking and have the answer in your head. So as you know, we have less than 9 years to achieve the 17 goals. And let's start with the first quiz. Is this number familiar to you, 244? Have you seen this number before? Take a second to think about it. I'm sure some of you already know it. Some of you may not be aware of it. So what is 244 for the SDGs? Well, it's basically the indicators, right? So we have the 17 goals, and underneath the 17 goals, you have 169 targets. And for each target, there's some number of indicators that indicates how we're doing on this target. And the total number of indicators for the 17 goals is 244 indicators. By the way, some of these indicators are kind of the same. So you have one indicator for 2 or more targets, and that's okay. So basically, the 244 indicators are a very useful thing to realize, because they are the ones that we look at to monitor the progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Okay, I have another question. So for you to know, every SDG, there's at least one country has achieved it. Like every SDG of the 17, at least one country now, as we speak now, has achieved a goal. Okay, there's one goal that wasn't achieved by any of the countries. Any of the 193 countries, none of them achieved. There's only one goal that none of them achieved. And do you know which one is this, or do you think which one can this goal be? It's actually SDG 2, which is zero hunger. So SDG 2, as you speak, as per the latest data from Cambridge University Press about the Sustainable Development Goals report for 2020, it was not achieved till now by any of the countries. So it's a problem, it's a challenge, but also it's an opportunity. And it tells you a lot of the stories about the Sustainable Development Goals and where is the hardest one to achieve. This is an interesting one. It's about some sort of correlations that you can see when you see the data on the Sustainable Development Goals and its achievements. So, for example, there's a very strong correlation between the Sustainable Development Goals Index, which is the average SDG achievement index for all the countries, for every country, and the GDP. So probably the higher the GDP, a high GDP is correlated with high SDG index. So if you're a country with a very high GDP per capita, probably you have a high possibility of having an SDG or strong correlation with your high SDG index, and that makes perfect sense. But there are actually some SDGs that are correlated with, has a negative correlation with the SDG index. In other words, if a country is doing very well on the goals collectively, they are doing very well on the GDP per capita, they're actually not doing very well on this SDG. So in other words, the higher SDG index is, probably the poorer is your performance on this specific SDG. Which is interesting to see that SDG 3 and SDG 9 are very much strongly correlated with the SDG index. So in other words, if you're having a very good SDG index, very good GDP, probably you're doing very good in SDG 3 and 9. However, SDG 13 and 12 have a very strong negative correlation, which means that if you have a country with a very high SDG index, mostly very high GDP, you probably are doing a very bad score or are performing poorly on SDG 12 and 13, which is responsible consumption and production and climate change. This is a very interesting insight to think about, by the way. Why? Because if you're creating an innovation that has to do something with healthcare, make sure that you're doing it in the right market. Make sure that you're doing it in a market where this would be a challenge, so that your innovation would really make a difference. However, if you're going for a country that is extremely, like a very well-developed country with a very high GDP per capita, with a very good SDG index, right? Most probably, they will have a problem in climate change and responsible consumption and production. So then something that works on CO2 emission or making manufacturing more green, manufacturing more sustainable would be very useful. Or having something related to climate change, this would be very useful in high-performing countries on the SDG index, which is a very interesting thing to see, this interplay or this kind of correlation between the SDGs, the GDP, and the SDG index for each country. This is one of the papers that was published in the Nature magazine last year by Max Tegmark, actually, and some other professors from MIT. And so it's a really interesting one. It discusses the role of AI for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, it's an interesting paper to read, so you can go and read it, and it's in the Nature Communication Journal. But this part of the paper I found very interesting, which basically they proved that AI can enable the accomplishment of 134 targets across the goals from out of the 169 targets. But it also may inhibit or kind of slow down 59 targets from being achieved, which is a very interesting one, right? So now we talked about technology, sustainability, and SDGs, but how can we bridge both? How can we bridge this idea of the opportunity and the solution that technology can provide with the Sustainable Development Goals needs and the SDGs kind of achievement? It's actually innovation, right? If you think in an innovative way of applying applications and services, you need to really think this way to make sure that you are achieving the Sustainable Development Goals using the solution that is there in the technology part. So what is innovation? And that's a very important question. So innovation is actually the successful implementation of ideas. It might be a very simple sentence, but it's extremely important, because some people, they mistake ideas with innovation or invention with innovation. And invention is completely different than innovation. So invention is just an idea, a good idea, something that might be not very useful or might be not very implementable, right? But then innovation at any particular time have a useful added value for users. And that's where you can take something, put it in a specific process to create a good innovation out of it. So when we talk about innovation, we're talking about the skill of interplay between a service or an invention offering, which is more or less technology nowadays, and a market or people who are the users of this innovation or offering. So it's basically the mix between the hard science, what we call it, and the social science. Hard science is where you are thinking about technology, I think about the financial sustainability or the business model, but then the social science is where can you apply this? Is it about the consumer behavior, the user patterns, the right market, when we were talking about the SDG, the global market or the local market challenges? And you have to be aware of both things. You cannot be focusing only on the service or on the product without thinking where it can be applied and how the user can use this. And also you cannot use it because you have a good market for it and the product itself is not unique or is not different. And as you know, there's different types of innovation. There's a product innovation, there's a process innovation, there's a service innovation, business model innovation. So it's not only about technology innovation, it's not only about the product, specific product that is very innovative. You can have something that's been used all the time, but you just use it in a different way. You just used something that has been used all the time in the same way, but you apply a different process to it. Or you can be innovative in terms of the business model itself, right? So this kind of things is very interesting to think about when you think about innovation, specifically when you talk about technology and sustainable development goals, because these two fields were not very close in the past. So now we're having this kind of convergence between tech innovation and sustainable development goals. So these are 5 elements that I would say that would make sure that you are thinking in an innovative way. Because innovation is all about maintaining, I would say, a competitive advantage or a unique selling point, USP. Like being innovative is making sure that you have something that is new or novel in a way. And make sure that you can also communicate this USP or communicate this competitive advantage. And that's where really things can scale. If you're doing the same thing, it won't scale because it's been there. If you're doing something new but you cannot communicate it in many ways, it won't scale as well because nobody would know about that. So these are the 5 elements that would make sure that the innovation is kind of I would say, spot on or in the right place. So the first one is precision on target. You have to make sure what is the exact problem you're solving, what's the exact challenge, right? And who are the exact people or the users that are using this innovation, product or service or whatever application it is, like who are the exact people and where they are and what about and which problem and which challenge exactly specifically. The more you can be precise, the more you can actually add value. The second one is the positioning. And this is what I was talking about the market. So the strategic positioning here is about what's different. Like what's different in this, what's different in that, what's the unique thing, what's the differentiator, why your solution is different than all the other solutions that did the same thing. So you don't have to think about creating a product, you have also to think about creating a differentiator in your product or a differentiator in your application. So in other words, when you're pitching, when you're thinking about an innovation, don't explain the product as much as you can explain its differentiations. So don't tell me what it's doing, tell me what's doing in relevance to the, I wouldn't say competitors, but the other products. So focus on what's different, not what is it. The third thing is always think about process innovation. Whatever you're doing, it's all about the process. So you need to be efficient, you need to be optimized, and you need to be you have some sort of a cost advantage or cost optimization angle to it. The more you can have that, the more you are likely to scale and succeed. The thing is, some people only focus on the process innovation, which is perfect, by the way. You don't need to do anything else if you have a much better or much optimized process. And I would say that the fourth thing is agility. Your innovation or solution or service has to be very agile, so it can be adaptable. And well, I don't know if this word exists in English, but you have to be having some sort of partnership ability. You have to be very easily interfacing with other partners through your service and your application area product. So it has to be a very much of an agile one that can adapt with any changes, and can also be very much of a having a high level of partnership ability. So it can partner with governments from an angle, it can partner with corporates, it can partner with different stuff like that. And the last one, which I assume is actually one of the most important, is measurability. So measurability is the fact that it can be monitored. If you can monitor something, you can improve it. If you cannot monitor it, or if you cannot measure it, you cannot improve it. So you always have to have a clear angle of KPI or monitoring to have a clear feedback about what you're doing and what you can do better, or what you can do different. I'm not sure what you were doing about the time. Sadia, please tell me if I'm taking too much time so that I can wrap it up.
Yes, you can start to wrap it up. We still have a little bit of time. Yes. Okay,
perfect. So maybe the last thing here that I would like to say, and as Sadia said, to wrap it up, is it's all about the interplay of the three things I discussed: technology, innovation, and SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals. The SDGs has to always be the compass. This is where the direction is, because everything should be more sustainable. So this defines for me the effectiveness. How effective you are is how you're making the world a better place, how you make sure that things are moving toward the sustainable development. And if you're not moving towards this direction, you're part of the problem, right? If your innovation is doing more harm than good, then there's a problem. So that's the target. That's the direction. However, you cannot go to this direction without technology, which provides scalability, and without innovation, which provides efficiency. So any business now is either a tech business or a tech-enabled business. And because of this kind of sea of innovations around us, you have to be really novel and agile and have some sort of cost advantage. And the process is much more innovative. The interplay between these three things, innovation, technology, and SDGs, if you can make sure that your solution or your application or your service checks these boxes, then you have something that definitely can scale. Let me give you some examples here. So this is a company that was actually launched, I think, last year in the UK. It's called Carbon-Re. You can Google it. And what I like about them is that they basically looked at what I was discussing about SDG 12, the production and consumption sustainability in the SDGs. And I told you there's a negative correlation between this SDG and all the SDGs. And they checked that there's something called the foundation industries, which is basically the industries of cement, chemicals, and steel, these three of them, right? And they managed to create an AI algorithm that optimizes the process of these kind of productions and industries for a factory, in a factory settings. So basically, as a factory, you would reach out to this company and they cut emissions, the CO2 emission from your factory, and by this they reduce costs of the manufacturing. And this is exactly what I'm talking about. They use the AI technology, the technology part. They're innovative because they are actually reducing your costs as a manufacturer. So that's a good thing you want to do. And by that, they're also offsetting the CO2 emission, which is the SDG element. This will be something that's definitely going to scale. There are other applications that you can always check, things like, the predicting Alzheimer's using AI, or using robots for swear monitor things, or these applications where they can even tell you what's happening in the environment around you for visually impaired people or blind people. It's really all of them. They have the three components checked. So technology that provides scalability, SDGs that provide sustainability and effectiveness, and innovation which provides efficiency. This is actually my last slide, and I would tell you to really visit the Tech for All. So it's Tech for, the letter for all. It's an initiative by Huawei, and it is basically been working for the last 2 years on using what I just mentioned, SDGs, technology, and innovation, for creating a lot of projects and products and applications to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. It's very interesting to log into there and see I mean, there's, I think, more than 80 applications or things that you can get some ideas from and kind of roam around. It's all about environment, education, agriculture, and healthcare. So it's very, very interesting one to visit and check and get some ideas from. And with this, I would like to thank you very much. And please tell me if there's any questions or discussion I'm willing to take. Thank you very much, Sadia and the team.
Hi, Ahmed. Thank you so much for your informative presentation. Currently, we don't really have any questions, so I suppose we'll be moving on. I believe all the participants have learned much about the challenges and opportunities of data and about the incorporation of technology into their potential solutions. So the framing of the SDGs were also extremely useful to participants who are still thinking about which SDG they actually want to work on. The next segment involves the building of a SDG Canvas, which will allow participants to understand the key elements that are involved in building your SDG solution step by step. I will now be inviting Ahmedriya Anastasaki, the Consultant in Innovation for SDG Education and Partnerships, Office of the Executive Director, United Nations Institute for Training and Research. Hi, Ahmedriya.
Hello, Sadia, and good afternoon from Geneva to our audience. I'm very happy to be here in the inauguration training of the hackathon, and also among other invited experts in the bootcamp, who bring fresh ideas and really cutting edge perspectives here to innovating for sustainability and the SDGs. UNITAR is the training arm of the United Nations, and all our capacity building activities, they're geared around the Sustainable Development Goals and the Agenda 2030. We reach more than 300,000 beneficiaries each year with our training. So I'm very happy to be here and to talk to you today about how innovation for sustainable development can be positioned. If it's possible, if you could put up the slides I have shared with you from our presentation and the content, it would be great. Perfect. Great, so we can move to the first slide, which shows the SDG Innovation Canvas. I will wait. Great, thank you so much. So I will talk to you exactly about how can innovation be positioned for sustainable development, and really what are the key important elements and steps for approaching and building an SDG innovation or a new idea for addressing an SDG challenge or multiple challenges. This is a methodology we built together with partners in the common work we do on SDG education and open innovation. And I know that in the SDG Open Hack, but already here in the SDG Innovation Bootcamp, we have many representatives from the private sector and business, and with whom the participants will work together to find and incorporate methods into comprehensive plans for taking the different ideas further. And this methodology is the SDG Innovation Canvas, and it's not really far from a canvas used by companies. This is another canvas, it's called the Business Canvas, on which we base the SDG Innovation one. The Business Canvas, as information, it's featured in the Business Harvard Review. It has gone all around the world really to help companies move beyond strategies that are merely centered around products, but they move towards more business model thinking and lean startup approaches. So using this canvas as a basis, we have adapted it and we progressively enrich it with important elements needed to clear out when our beneficiaries and when young innovators and really people from interdisciplinary backgrounds want to design an SDG innovation. And everyone should think about it as a series of hypotheses you need to check along the process of innovation. And the canvas includes 12 important elements to think through and develop. But let me walk you through the SDG Innovation Canvas step by step. Next slide, please. Great. So the first very important element is the innovation outline and sketch. And in business terms, here we would talk about a minimum viable product, an MVP. But the product itself, in our case, this is the innovation we produce, is not enough to showcase its impact, but it needs to be explained, and someone really needs to feel how it can be experienced. So the first step is really to build an environment, putting people in the context of what the experience of the solution might be. And this is the outline sketch of the innovation. So really the important thing here is to highlight what is the main problem, what is the central pain point that can be solved with the innovation we develop and produce. And for this, you might want to get the big picture of the context and the current situation, really the statistics of it. For example, if you want to help increase accessibility of children with disabilities at school, or you want to bring more sustainable finance literacy to the public or to financial institutions, you can make some research and really go around and see what are the existing initiatives already out there to gather best practices. And this can definitely help someone identify at later stage how your innovation can stand out among existing practices. And the outline and sketch of innovation in practical way, it can be really a mind map, it can be a sketch, a storytelling of how the innovation impacts one person, but also, of course, the many, and how it solves more largely the challenge you identify. So remember that the innovation should really speak to the needs of a community at large, but when telling the story, you can always start with how it affects one person and then include your strategies for scaling up, which I will talk about later. So, next slide, please. So gathering a team, and this is key for building an SDG innovation. And this is very important when someone has a good idea to gather a team. And because it's a fact that alone we cannot overcome the big challenges of the Sustainable Development Goals. And we need a team with members who are motivated, who are thoughtful, they can contribute in practical ways with their own skills and motivation for the project. So when you gather a team, you should be able to identify where everyone can help and what is needed or missing as a skill for developing your solution. And this can help you scout the people as well that you think that could be best contributors. And then, of course, collectively, you can decide and agree on the best way to move the innovation further. Next slide, please. Key innovation. So key innovation is really what makes your innovation special. It can include social or technical components. And there is always one innovation that is unique compared to others around. And this can really come with framing your solution around a specific challenge, a specific problem. It can make your innovation more concrete and localized. You can, for this, you can ask around the team, is the innovation available in this country? Or what is it in the technology you use that makes it unique in the context? But this will come by researching other innovations, and as we explained as well in the outline, in the sketch previously. And it can lead you to use already existing innovations for a different purpose to address an innovation that addresses a different SDG challenge, or scale already existing solutions or tools to standardize, to replicate an innovation, and so on. So you can really understand here that the innovation can come in many different ways. Next slide, please. SDGs goals and targets. We talk about it in the context of the hackathon, of course, for addressing different challenges for specific SDGs. And the framework itself is very important and can be very helpful when we build the SDG innovation, because your innovation is built to tackle a challenge around sustainable development. And it can be useful to many different directions for your project. Essentially, it can help you make the value proposition of your innovation even more concrete by identifying which key SDGs your innovation is associated with and what are the main targets you are addressing. The SDGs have in total 169 targets, so very specific ways and approaches, but also that are different approaches and actions which give the more general picture of how the goals can be implemented. So choosing the most relevant SDGs and targets to you, it can give you a more comprehensive approach to what contributing to at a big scale with your innovation. Next slide, please. So with the value proposition, you show the ways your innovation will bring benefit to different aspects, and this can be quantitative or qualitative aspects. It can be quantitative efficiency, like productivity, or combined with other qualitative experience, like overall community experience, different outcomes on impacts, big impacts that you want to bring with your SDG innovation. So essentially, the value proposition, it responds to the question of how, in which way your innovation brings value and differs from the others. And it links with the outline, with a sketch of your innovation in terms of what your innovation offers as an experience, but it allows you also to reflect beforehand on what are the services, what are the products your innovation evolves, and what are the advantages, the game creators, the needs your innovation suits in the society or different communities. And here the SDGs framework, as we mentioned, plays a very important role in identifying the big picture. Next slide, please. Thank you. So defining what is unique about your innovation with the support of the SDGs framework, you can then frame the bigger scope of it. So often there are good spillovers around different areas the innovation can impact, and good innovation in one field can be positive, but it can of course be negative in another field. So you really want to identify it here at early stage when you build your innovation. So by defining the scope of your SDG innovation, you can really measure the success of your in creating impacts across multiple SDG areas. And how you can do that, you can use again the SDGs framework and and cross-match different targets to define the level of positive interactions. So this table, this image you see here, it's called a cross-impact matrix of target interactions between the SDGs. Is a matrix that is often used in decision-making to prioritize the SDG targets and to identify from the policymakers what are the most effective partnerships they can develop to achieve them. And you can see there are different colors of indicators. Green means positive interactions, so you can see a lot of them there among the SDG targets. Red means negative interactions, showcasing how one target can show progress on another SDG target. So this exercise can be also used for your own specific project too, to show the relevance and contribution of your innovation to the SDGs. Next slide, please. Key SDG success metrics. So essentially measuring success for your SDG after also identifying where your innovation can contribute most positively to different areas. It can help you also find the indicators with which you can measure the success of it. So defining which and in what levels your innovation can positively influence the challenge you're addressing. So depending on the challenge you tackle, of course, there can be different factors and indicators to consider, qualitative and quantitative ones. It can be starting with the number of people that are positively impacted by your innovation, or if you're working on SDG 2, it can be a reduction of poverty rates. It can be SDG 10, inequality reduction, and other qualitatives or as well measurements as quality of life, well-being, and so on. So this really can help you. All this previous elements that are based around the SDG framework, they can help you frame your SDG innovation accordingly and really target it to the goals and have the big picture of getting to a bigger scale of how your innovation can help the society, the environment, and all the aspects around it. Next slide, please. So key support resources. I can see in the program of tomorrow that the SDG Innovation Bootcamp continues, that you will learn about community and how to build one around to maintain, support, and also develop your ideas. And this is one key resource, along with others you might need for building your SDG innovation. And this can be partners, it can be equipment. So basically here, it's very important to keep in mind that you can source, you can provision what you need for your project, and you can source the expertise based on what you identified as priorities for your innovation there. And here you need to collectively respond to 4 key questions to really cross-check this element. So what key resources are needed for the innovation to address the challenge and succeed? On which partners you can rely on? And here you can really be ambitious and think big, and don't reflect firstly on the financial aspect for the project to move on, for your idea to develop, but think about who could also leverage its network to support you. Again, around community building, are there any existing communities you can mobilize, or is there an opportunity to build and grow your own community? Next slide, please. So, ninth element, when positioning and doing innovation for sustainability, we cannot have a complete project if we don't take into account sustainability in our innovation and our strategies for scaling to a wider area, a larger community, provision our project with potential to scale by standardizing or establishing the innovation. So, of course, these are not two separate things, innovation, sustainability, and scaling, but they're much interlinked, because when placing your strategy to scale, reaching your goal is not possible if you haven't put into perspective ideas, concepts, or practices that contribute to responsible innovation, and that contributes to social cohesion, to economic viability, and so on. And the other way around, when taking into consideration sustainability factors, they are at the same time indicators of your scaling potential. So very much interlinked. And this guiding questions, this specific elements here under this step can help you to set the stage to innovation, sustainability, and scaling. So how do you plan to deliver your innovation in a sustainable way? How do you plan to integrate inclusivity in it? So how do you plan to scale your innovation as well, from transferring impact from primary communities or consumers to secondary ones that are affected? And if you plan to deliver your innovation in a commercial way, think about analyzing the current market competition and your advantages to it. And to make impact at global scale, what technical or social mechanisms you can use? Is it community building? Is it a building partnership? Is it by standardizing a technology solution? So it can be different ways to think around it based on the stage you are in innovation and the challenge you're addressing. Next slide, please. Build a revenue model, and this we realized from our experience as well in seeing social innovation projects developing, that this is a quite important element to feature here, because it doesn't mean only focusing on commercial purposes or profit, but it can we can really give another meaning to it when creating an SDG innovation. So this aligns as well with what I highlighted just previously for analyzing your market competition, defining your own advantages and factors for creating an effective model. But again, that wouldn't mean directly targeting profit, but really engage in the process of finding the right fit for your innovation. Maybe this can be still your unique value proposition, the short or long-term milestones, the right investors, and revenue streams might not be of a priority when starting and developing your innovation. Of course, this is for a fact, but eventually in the process they might become one. So this is a lesson learned in social innovation projects, especially with solutions addressed to the most vulnerable, who often cannot afford a solution if your solution is commercial. So this is why it's important to mention the revenue model here, which is again subject to to the team of innovators to find the right fit. Next slide, please. And every innovation and every SDG innovation has limitations and threats. So you might want to show also, besides showing what you're able to do and that makes your innovation unique, and identified all these important elements, but you might also want to show what you're not able to do. And this is very important because it shows in what you can be more focused to develop your idea with excluding unintended consequences or lack of measurable impact and so on. So really by defining limitation and threats, what does externally limit your limitation? Is it complexity for evaluating your impact, or is it because the scope is big? So what are the threats here? The impacts, think about the impact, risk, and consequences of an existing policy, a tool, or even a lack of this. It can be a limitation to the innovation. So equally important to define here in the canvas. Next slide, please. Last but not least, in whichever stage of the innovation process you reach, even after the 24 hours SDG Open Hack, it's important to define the next 3 steps and see them as action points for your team. And this could be identifying the way you move forward with assessing your data or contact potential partners. So this is something we propose and suggest when offering the SDG Innovation Canvas. And in whatever stage of the innovation you are in an idea, think about what is important to prioritize and what are the next 3 things we can do together as a team to take our solution further. Next slide, please. Just before I conclude, I just like to see if there are any questions coming from our audience. I can see here in StreamYard, no questions. I don't know if there are any questions on the YouTube channel.
Hi, Ahmedriya.
Hello.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I believe there's no questions at the moment. So I would just like to sort of recap what you've talked about. So I think that you have imparted a lot of valuable information on the approach participants can actually take to build their SDG solutions. And they better understand the importance of SDGs now and the processes that are involved in making this solution. In particular, I really enjoyed hearing about the portion on the key SDG success metrics. So knowing that the solutions that the participants come up with can add to this success metrics is very heartening. So we are hopeful that the students will be able to come up with such effective solutions during our hackathon. And GGEF is extremely happy to be able to collaborate with UNITA on this hackathon. And you have been of much help to us, and we are ever grateful for your expertise. So thank you so much for speaking to all of the participants at this hackathon. So we will now be moving on to the last segment of our bootcamp. So our final segment actually involves gaining an understanding on how innovation can lead to real change. So the solutions that we have heard about so far actually promise great innovation, and we hope that students will be able to observe how these innovative solutions hold the potential to change the societal and environmental issues. So to speak on this topic, I would like to invite Magdalene Loh, the Senior Vice President of the Head of Innovation at Prudential Assurance Singapore.
Hey, thank you very much, Sadia.
Hi, Magdalene.
Hello. It's a privilege to be here. Thanks for having me here.
We're happy to have you here.
Great. Do I dive right into it now?
Yes, please do.
Okay. Cool. Is there a way for interaction to happen? Like people can type in the chat and I'll be able to see this, right?
Currently, if you just look at the comments tab of the Streamyard, you would be able to see if anyone has any comments. Yep.
Fantastic. So I'm going to say, let's make this as interactive as we can. I know it's late in the day and you must have had a busy day already. But I'd like to make this as practical and as interactive as I possibly can for you. So feel free to type in comments in the chat, ask your questions, and I'll do my best to answer them, right? So Debs, you have the slides on. Great, fantastic. So maybe a little bit of what to expect in the next half an hour, right? We are going to be talking a little bit about Prudential and how we are innovating to help everyone to live well, helping everyone to get the most out of life, right? And I share that as a showcase, but also as a way of sharing what some of the MNCs in the world are doing and how some of your solutions, right, could find traction by working with people who are already doing some of this work. So after that, I've also been asked to share with you about our view of what is innovation and what we call our 4I innovation framework, right? And hopefully that helps you as you move into a couple of very intensive days to bring, to tackle the world's big problems and then bring some of these ideas to life, hopefully in the days ahead, right? And then I'll take questions, but don't wait till the Q&A part. Just feel free to type them into the chat, and at an appropriate juncture, I can answer them as well, right? So a little bit about me. I'm Magdalene, and I head up innovation at Prudential Singapore. It's been a really interesting ride because we at Prudential, we not only just look at business type issues, but it's actually part of my job to be here speaking with people like yourselves to try to bring solutions to life, right? To first ideate, figure out what are the big problems of the world, figuring out some of the possible solutions, and then trying to bring those to life. So, who's Prudential? Life insurance. We're talking about the. We have been around for close to about 90 years in Singapore, and with a network of 5,000 consultants, right? We are committed to helping Singaporeans to become wealthier and become healthier. Why do I say this, right? Because as you think up your solutions, these are existing resources, right? For that you could tap on. For the right project, we are very keen actually to open up our networks, open up the resources that we have, and to see how we can work with you to move your solutions, right, from ideation to prototype, from prototype into the real world. We have the face of Prudential. You might have seen that on our logo. So these are some of the things that we stand for, right? Prudence, justice, fortitude, temperance. And it's really in the Prudential DNA that these are some of these things. These are some of the things that we really want to be doing, right? Financial literacy involves the need to be prudent, learning from the past, planning for the future. Just skip onto that. What is our purpose, right? It is to help people get the most out of life, and especially in the areas of health and wealth, right? And that's core in the whole SDG process, right? In the SDG goals. So these are things that we want to be doing. So if you are looking at health solutions, think prevent, think protect, think postpone, right? Postponing the onset of diseases, helping people be financially ready. How do you help underserved groups, right? With financial literacy as well as financial solutions. So these are things that we do want to support groups, right? Young people like yourselves who are keen to make a dent in the universe. We want to be able to help you in that area. What has Prudential been doing, right? One of the things that personally I'm really, really happy that we had the opportunity to get involved in is what you see on the screen now, providing a free insurance, right, to the staff of fintech firms. So as Prudential, we're a financial services firm. We work very closely with the fintech ecosystem. This happened around, well, this time last year. The whole circuit breaker thing had just started. Pandemic was here. MAS reached out and said, is there something you can do for the fintech firms? And we scrambled this new product, new to Prudential product, right? In 6 working days. By the 10th working day, it was out there. We started to onboard people, right? Why am I sharing this? Because firstly, it demonstrates Prudential's will, right? Like we really want to be out there making a difference. Secondly, this happened because of the new ways of working that we have in our company, very agile, working across departments. And also it happened because of the 4I innovation framework that I'm going to be sharing with you in a bit, right? So these are all the things that, practical things that have been rolled out into the real world because there is a certain way that we've been trained to think, a certain mindset and just a spirit of collaboration that we all had across the board, right? And I'll share a little bit more of that to you in a while. I'll also share one very key thing, right? For those of you working on the health and wealth parts of the SDG goals, right? No one knows you like your pulse. This is an app that we have launched. Again, I share this because as you think of your solutions, you don't have to feel that you are starting from ground zero, right? But if you think that there's anything in this ecosystem that could possibly help you work better, right? Or you could build on top of this app, feel free to get in touch and let us know. So do check it out. Literally, millions and millions of dollars has been poured into this development already. It reaches people in 13 different Asian countries, and it's starting to reach some of our through our African colleagues, some African countries as well, right? So I just want to encourage you in coming up with your ideas to change the world. Don't just be restricted to things that you develop yourself. One of the things we often say in innovation is, the not invented here syndrome, right? If it's not something I personally thought of, I personally built, then yeah, it's good, but not for me. But right onto these things, right? From Prudential, as well as those that are outside, that's not from Prudential, but whatever can get us to the goals of helping people, right, to just lead better lives, get the most out of life. Those are the things that we want to be embracing, that we want to be sort of taking all the resources we have at our disposal, including resources by companies like Prudential and our Pulse app. So take that, run with that, explore what you can do with that. And you could suggest, for example, look, great app. There's this thing, if only you had this extra feature, or you had this, you link these two features together, and then we'll add on, layer on something else from our side that we just thought of. Wouldn't this be a lot more powerful? So we will love to hear ideas like this, and we'll be very, very happy to explore with you how we could collaborate, right? To bring this out to even more people. And we do have that distribution already sorted, right? So for the right solution, this could come onto the app and be pushed to many, many people quite easily, right? Definitely a lot faster than if you were to build a new app entirely by yourself. Right, so these are some of the things you could do, access healthcare services, buy micro insurance plans. And one of the things we're really quite happy with the app is that the timing is actually pretty perfect. So around the time when it was launched in Singapore, shortly after that, the whole pandemic kicked in. And it was really good that we were able to then tell people, you could go onto the app, check out your symptoms. So you literally could say to the app, I have a headache, for example, answer a few questions, and then they'll tell you, is it on a probabilistic perspective, right? Is it something that's very serious, or is it something that is, just stay at home, rest, you should be fine. And if you need a GP, you immediately could tap onto one on the app itself, right? And if we talk about postponing diseases and so on, there's a whole variety of tools out there which people could be using. So I share that again as sort of hoping to kickstart your thinking process to build on the things that we already have here, right? One example of how we have worked with teams that have come out from competition. So this was a competition we organized at Prudential. It's in the 4th year now. This Fine New, right, from Millennium Institute that you see here, he's the overall champion of last year's competition. And after the competition, we actually worked with him. We told him he had to recode all these stuff, do it differently in some ways. He actually did it. He incorporated a company. We gave him his first contract. And we are very, very happy to say that in June, July, we will be going out with him to do a pilot, right, with the schools, through our networks, through his networks, and we're really, really excited about this. But this is one of the ways, right, we partner with teams to bring their solutions into the real world. So look out for this, right, Vendor Bay. It's a 3D virtual world, and you do a bit of traveling vicariously now that we're all at home again. Yeah, of course we help with connecting them to resources and grants and so on. So you see a few screenshots on the screen. That's from the game. Recently, very happy to share, they got picked up by Minister of State Loh Yen Ling for their efforts in doing a virtual National Day parade last year. Right, that's the image outside City Hall that you see there. Okay, so if we can move on, perhaps I'll just pause here and say, ask if there are any questions at this stage, perhaps on how you could collaborate with Prudential, what are some of the areas you are interested in, and then I can try to cover that a little bit more if you have any questions on that. If not, let me jump straight into the
Magdalene, sorry. We actually have a question. So a question was asked about the Pulse app, and they asked whether the Pulse app actually covers mental health issues.
Fantastic. I think we have some articles. We may have some articles on it on mental health, but we don't have a feature, right? Things that you can actually interact with from a mental health perspective at the moment. So that was a great question. You can find out more about the app if you go on to your app store, whether you're Apple or Android user. Go to your app store, Pulse by Prudential. It's free to download. You can go ahead and do that. You could also go on to a subscription. Don't worry, the first 14 days, I believe it's free for use. And check out what's in the subscription side of the house. So I think you pay something like $9.50 a month. And then there are some quite cool features, nutrition plans. My personal favorite is they challenge me in 30 seconds, how many squats can I do? And then you try to beat your personal best just because, right? So there are some features like that. But even in the free zone, there's a whole bunch of stuff, right? And all of that is to help people to prevent, postpone chronic diseases, right? Just stay fit and healthy. And that's a huge shift for an insurer, right? For those of you who are familiar with the industry, insurers used to be paid, right? We wait till somebody becomes ill, right? And then we pay out. That's our role traditionally as insurers, right? In the health space. But now insurers, including Prudential, are looking at how we can, work with government, work with other players in the innovation scene to be able to help people stay healthy so that, well, they claim less, so that's good for us, but also who wants to get sick, right? And then that really helps in terms of the whole national government agenda of moving from health care to health. Right, so how do you get people healthier so that we all just lead more fulfilling lives? Fun fact: the we talk about lifespan, right? So we all understand what that means. It's the time we were born to the time we die, that's lifespan. There's this concept of health span as well, from the time we are born to the time we stop being very healthy, and the quality of life starts deteriorating quite rapidly. The time, the excess time, right? That's on average, I hear, about 8 years. So how do we maintain quality of life, right? Because lifespans have been increasing, but not health spans. So these are some critical issues that we want to work with people, right, including yourselves, to try to tackle. How do you start from young? How do you help, somebody like myself, right? I hold an office job. I'm not very physically active most of the time. How do you nudge me to do things, right? Eat healthier, exercise more, and so on. Okay, so I encourage you to go to the App Store and check out the Pulse app. I hope that answers the questions. I'll move now into the part I was really supposed to be sharing about our view of innovation, right? You might have heard a lot of very chim, right, very deep definitions of it. In Prudential Singapore, we have summarized it to 2 words. Innovation is anything new, it's anything better, right? That's it. And if that's what you are doing here in this competition, that's it. You have created an innovative solution, right? Something new that's not there, something better, right? It could be something that's already in the market, but you've improved it. That counts as well, right? So towards 3 horizons to look at. We talk about innovation that is continuous improvement, right? So it's a little bit better. It's a +1 of something that's already there. That's cool, right? Especially for a competition of like quite limited duration. If you can do something that's continuous improvement and bring it to life, I think that should count for a lot. So do that, as well as I think was mentioned by the previous speaker. Do that, but tell us what are the next few steps, right? That would be really cool. That's horizon 1. Horizon 2 would be extending core capabilities to new markets. So one example that insight from Prudential's experience would be claims-based pricing. So some of you might remember about 5-6 years ago, inflation of medical costs was a huge issue. And I remember reading in the Straits Times, there were people who said, hey, I'm checking into a hospital because I got a little procedure. Doctor gave me the choice of day surgery or going in, but there was a football match. I didn't have cable, so I'm going to the hospital. People like that inflate medical costs a lot. Prudential introduced this idea of claims-based pricing. So if you claim, you pay more. You don't claim, you pay less. That concept is not new. It's very, very standard in motor insurance. We took it from another field, and then we put it into health insurance, right? That's an example of extending something that's a core capability in another area into whatever you are working on, right? So have a think about innovation from that perspective. What else can you borrow from another place, another sector? Could be very standard for them, but it's never been applied to whatever you're working on. And can this then work, right? And I'll encourage you to really just think along that lines, test it out, because then there's a lot of very rich materials that you can get from another source. The third horizon of innovation are the big differences, right? So some of you might be thinking, okay, instead of doing something that is a bit more like continuous improvement or borrowing from another field, I'll totally change the way people think about something, right? Something a bit more blue skies, something that's huge, right? The way I'll describe it is the iPhone when it first came out, right? It not only changed the world of hardware, where you have, the whole thing is like just a touchscreen phone, but it also changed the whole world, the whole world of software, right? Where you have the concept of the App Store, you have the concept of Apple Music, which changed, people buying habits, right? $20 CDs to 99-cent songs to now, just pay one fee, unlimited number of songs, right? So it could be huge, game-changing things like that, right? So decide for yourself which area do you want to play in, and then go for it, right? For innovation framework, let me just very, very quickly share some top-level ideas. And if you are interested in knowing a little bit more about this, I believe one of the things we can offer, if it's not already out there, is we have put up some more of these materials on an app called Nobi, and I believe we would be happy to share with you if that's something you want to have access to, right? So do feel free to reach out. Look me out on LinkedIn or go through the conference organizers. We would be able to avail that, right? To give you more detail. So I'm going to try to summarize in 10 minutes what we usually take at least 3 hours to do, right? And you can get more info from us if you want to after this session. Ideate, implement, impact, inspire, right? It's very, very important to know that it's the whole process. I know it's a very relatively short competition, going to be really intensive in a couple of days, right? And you might be thinking, what can you do? And that's exactly why I shared the example of how we brought a whole new product to life within 6 working days, right? Ideate and implement, for most part, shouldn't be too foreign to you. For those of you who have been through design thinking courses, the sub-points under ideate, which is empathy, define, ideas generation, and then the ones under implement, rapid prototyping, test learn, they are classic design thinking, right? So just know that. But that's not enough, right? Because if we don't move on to a further implementation stage, right? In a very agile way, bring it to life and then continuously tweak it. That's the agile ways of Kaizen and OPEX. We're probably not going to see really good ideas come to life. You've probably heard me say this a lot of times, this session, come to life, come to life, come to life. And that's something that's very embedded in the Prudential philosophy of innovation, right? If you have a great idea, it remains a great idea until you bring it to life. Then it's an innovation, right? And then once it's live, we talk about measuring its impact. We talk about how do we amplify the impact through the ecosystem, right? And one way you can do that is reach out to Prudential, reach out to companies like Prudential, and see how we can work with you to amplify whatever you've built or designed, right? And then finally, we talk about inspiring. How do you tell that story so that more people come on board with you? You certainly have a pitching session and you'll be sharing it. So very, very key areas, right, to perfect, because anything that you can do alone probably is limited in size, all right, and scope. But once you can get people on board, people with different skill sets from you, people who speak a different language, right, from you in terms of the mindset, in terms of the industry, that's where you probably get the best bang for buck. And how do you co-create with people? How do you get people excited enough to say, okay, that sounds really cool, I'm coming on board with this? Right? Very quickly, I'll talk about converging and diverging. If you are wondering how to even get started, start with the broadest possible number of ideas, and then you converge back into a set of ideas you think you can work with, rearrange it in whatever ways, go broad again, come back in again. And a lot of the design thinking techniques are really using this principle, right? If you'd like to know more again, do reach out and we'll be very happy to share. Some tips for you. The 3 keywords we always tell our staff, right? Feasibility. Is it possible to do, to execute at this stage? If not, who else can you loop in, right, to make it feasible? Is it desirable? Do people actually want this stuff? And viability, does it actually work? Can it roll out? Can it be rolled out? Is it sustainable, right? You know, in some competitions I've seen, the solution involves like just throwing millions of dollars into something. Doesn't quite work because yes, even if you could find the first million, where's the second million coming from, right? So you need to build a whole system that supports the solution that you have suggested. I'll just pause here, right? And see if there are any questions. If not, then so feel free to type in your questions in the chat. I'll pick them up in the last couple of minutes, but I'll just fly through the framework very quickly, right? Just maybe stopping to share some of the most important, like high-level points. So it'll be really, really fast, but feel free to reach out after this, right? ideate, start with empathy, right? For all those of you who are not very sure where to start by talking to potential beneficiaries, right? People who could benefit from your solution, right? Interview them, hang out with them, walk a mile in their shoes, literally, yeah? And then from there, define the problem. What problem are you trying to solve, right? And that's super, super important. If you get this right, you solve a lot of other problems yourself, right? We don't want to be solving the wrong problem. So do spend time in that. We traditionally say in design thinking, if you have 1 hour to solve the problem, spend 50 minutes defining it, right? Figuring out what the users or the potential beneficiaries think, figure out what problem are you trying to solve, and then and only then go into ideas generation, right? I'm a Singaporean, I'm a corporate person. We are very, very predisposed to ideas generation. A lot of us just dive straight into it, but please don't miss out the first 2 steps. Empathy, talk to your users, talk to the people who be financing it, and then talk to the people who can support you in that as well, right? So empathy all around 360, but the end users most importantly, and then move into defining the problem. Ideas generation, that one, most of us have no problems with that. Rapid prototyping, again, very, very important. Before we make a recommendation, how do we know something has worked, right? We have to build some kind of a prototype at the most basic format, right? So an example is if you want an app, pretend that the app exists, right? And you do the work back end through a spreadsheet manually, but just test to see if the demand is even there before you start building out an app, for example. Yep, so rapid prototyping, we call this tactic that I just described as Wizard of Oz, right? It doesn't really exist, but to the user it exists, but back end is actually like 3 of us working off a spreadsheet maybe, right? But understanding the user demand, understanding the user flows, that usually helps a lot. That's a rapid prototyping method. Then there is test learning, right? If, for example, you do something like this and you tested it, does this work, right? If not, what can we tweak? And then you learn a little bit more. A works better than B, so therefore we should do A, but wait a minute, how about C, right? So test and learn before you commit to anything really, right? I know it's a competition, but we also want robust situations from it. There's a really beautiful test learn card here that we use in Prudential as well. And we've taken it from some of the best innovation practices, right, that's out there. So these are some questions you ask yourself, right? My hypothesis is, I know it works if, and so on. Then be very, very disciplined. Come back to the learn card and figure out, hey, does it really, really work or not? These are my actual results. And what does that mean for my experiment, right? I think that's mainly what we have time for. Agile ways of Kaizen and OPEX. I have touched on that. Measuring what matters as well. What does success look like? You have to be very honest with yourself, right? And put that out there. And it's okay to say, look, I tried this, didn't work out, and this is what we have learned, right? So say that. If that's what, and it could save the next person a lot of pain, because now there's a body of things, and that could be your contribution to the SDGs, right? Instead of like pretending something works or dressing it up to show that it actually works more than it has done, right? Measure what matters, and then of course ecosystem. I think I touched on that a little bit earlier. Find out people, right? Who else might be interested in what you're doing? If it's Prudential, feel free to reach out. If not, just be bold and reach out anyway, right? To the organizations that are interested in supporting the SDGs. But definitely come to us if it's something that we can be of help with. And then finally, in Inspire, storytelling. How do you tell the best possible story to inspire others to come on board, right? That's it. That's all I'm going to be saying at this stage. I think it's a lot of information, right? So feel free to get in touch. Feel free to come approach us and ask us any questions, really. Do we have questions at this stage?
Hi, Magdalene. Thank you so much for your presentation. Right now, I don't think there are any questions, but we see a lot of encouragement in the comment section. So we believe that your presentation was extremely effective. So I think the participants were really inspired to learn that apps such as Vendor Bay, an educational open world game, will be able to touch the lives of managers from the comfort of their home. And we also hope that the participants are geared up to expand on their solutions through such innovations, which we have learned from you is to make something new and better. So SDG Open Hack Singapore is partnering with Prudential Assurance Singapore for the third SDG, good health and well-being. So we hope that the participants who are working on that problem have actually tuned in to this useful presentation. So now we're going to have a short summary. So tonight's webinar, we have learned a lot from all of our presenters. So we would really like to thank them for covering so many different topics, and we hope that you've had a very enriching experience. We thank the mentors for their time and their valuable advice for the participants. We also look forward to seeing all of you tomorrow at the second session of our bootcamp. We'll cover a wider range of topics ranging from the key challenges of climate change, which will be introduced by Brandon Baker, a governance consultant at Morgan Stanley Capital International. Thomas Miller, the president of Open Geneva, will be speaking about methodologies behind innovation challenges, as well as community building. And John Zimmer, the founder of Manner Speaking, will be speaking about how to best deliver an effective pitch. We hope to see you there. Thank you and have a good night.
24 hours to change the world. Here's your chance to shape the future.